thing which I found at least about the question of mad, the whole mad argument is, there is a certain celebration of madness.
Yeah.
Right? Now, one of the things I also noticed about some people I know who have been branded as mentally ill is that they cherish the experience which is related to the distress. There's a massive ambiguity about that which goes between the tenor of the distress and almost a reverence for that experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, what could you say about that? And how when one says celebration of madness, it's also a celebration of these things.
Yeah.
And there are some people who've written about it brilliantly and all. Now the thing is that how does one reconcile, or does one try even to reconcile this? How does one, this double, anything about how to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that part I think is really needs to be at the core of any critical discussion. When I talked about the experience part, and I think this is it. You really. I think so. I suffered from long-term trauma because of all the memories I carried from my childhood about my mother's institutionalization. So she was in and out of hospitals. So I've seen her in really odd spaces, in odd postures. But she was a creative person. She wrote poetry. She was spiritually inclined. She was a very good artist. She wrote poetry that got published, by my mainstream publishing in Chennai. So where she didn't do too well was in the area of marriage and relationships. And I think that was what brought her into these institutions to begin with. And so I think so that that has really, really remained with me. And it's been a lifelong search for me personally. And if you see my family, it's like all of us in our childhood, me and my brother, we have seen, as we were in the house, which was a house like this, we would see ghosts and spirits and, red devils running around the house, climbing stairs. So we've maintained that extrasensory perception even till today. Like two Easters ago, I saw Jesus Christ on my terrace. And over a period of time, these experiences have toned down to something that I can cope with. I would love to see Jesus Christ on my terrace every Easter. It doesn't bother me. But if it was like Satan or something, I have a problem with that. And I know that my house is filled with a number of ghosts and spirits, and I appease them in my own ritualistic ways, So I think where there is a family with voice hearing experience is very strong. There is high level of creativity and high level of extrasensory perception. However you may call it, it could be spiritual, it could be like, brain cells acting up, whatever it is. But it is core experience. So, and usually you'll find, a lot of my brother, for example, is a genius with camera. And so we do, and I'm an arts-based therapist. I am not like genius at anything, but I love to draw, paint and sing and, these things, drum and all of that. So it stayed with me over the years. And this I would like to be my primary means of communication. So this is how I experience my life and relationships, through what I can do with my creative arts. And I know that a number of my friends, you should read Reshma Valiappan online. Amazing. Again, she's a voice hearer. Very deliberately chose to give up on medications when she found that it was interfering with her creativity and spiritual growth. So even though, and that's where we have tussle with feminism, because feminism, the way we understood it at that point, now I have a very different view of feminism. But at that point, how we understood it, there was no place for spiritual seeking. Well, I live with gods and demons every day, and my brother does, all of us who are like gone into that frame of hearing voices, we live with gods and demons, and we're okay with that. And we talk to them also, no problem. So we acknowledge them. So, and many people who are hearing voices do this. And this is how they cope, by giving a reality of form and structure to these other beings who inhabit them and having relationship with these voices. I know that, for example, Reshma was shattered when she had to go through a brain surgery for a tumor, and she lost some of her voices. It was like seeing someone die in your family. This voice has been close to you for like 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, and you just lost it. And nobody understood her sense of grievance and loss, and so she grieved a lot, and I think so that, but she's again an extremely creative person who, being like supposedly, I always joke, in the thick of in the ocean of depression, I wrote my books. So you tell me that I have no insight, then don't read my books. Because that's that, and it's the same with Reshma. She continues to hear voices. She continues to really deal with extremely disturbing personal experiences. She has learned stamina. Okay, if you see Jesus Christ on your terrace, shut up about it. Don't talk to others. So she's developed that kind of stamina. And she would never tell any doctor, and she doesn't see doctors anymore too, except for her neuro problems. But so that's how. And so creativity is a very strong. And if you ask me, I suffered 4 years through depression and all kinds of stuff. And if you ask me, would you have enjoyed your life better if you did not go through it? I say no. I want it back. Don't give it me in small doses, not in such high doses, but it's okay. It's you learn a lot. I wish there was a break, in depression or hearing voices episodes where you say, okay, give me a break, I'll just quickly write down what I'm learning and go back, then you come again. That doesn't happen. And that's when families freak out. You're like, oh my God.
Families freak out.
Yeah, families, that person is okay, it's like, unless somebody is really suicidal, then you have to have another set of skills to come in and step in over there to support.
Yeah.
But a large number of people, at least people who are building stamina rather than taking treatment, they are on another path. It involves creativity, it involves spirituality for most people.
One is building stamina rather than taking treatment.
That's what I'm saying. Treatment for me, even with antibiotics, it doesn't build stamina. So it's the same, whether psychiatric medication or whether it's antibiotics, it's the same for me. You don't build stamina by constantly consuming antibiotics. Right. So also, you either build stamina or you take medical treatment.
It's an amazing phrase, building stamina in this.
Yeah, I think.
And when she uses Reshma, especially,
yes.
that she builds stamina such that she does not feel the need to tell people that that she's hearing, seeing Jesus on her terrace.
No, it's a lot of other things, it's like, it could be personal integrity if you don't build stamina. I'm so much into fitness, really. As I grow older, I'm more and more into fitness, like food and long distance walking. So for me, stamina is what, I'm also a lot into body-based work through arts-based therapies. So for me, stamina is something which has that mind element as well as the body element. So I like that word.
I think the stamina is a beautiful term because it allows you to deal with the stress, emotional, psychological, physical stress, in a manner which translates across from the question of being mad or whatever to even the so-called sane, the kind of stress they go through. It's like a very nice term actually.
Also, you could look up Jill Mill Breckenridge online. They have amazing resources. Akhilesh Arya.
In fact, when I was talking about a person who has this double thing, is Akhilesh, because Akhilesh is incredibly productive in terms of his art. He's a Baroda arts history person, but he's also an artist.
He's an artist.
You should look at the kind of paintings he makes when he's, literally raving mad. I mean, one would call him raving mad, but the kinds of work he does, and when he's not, you know that he's going to lose it. It doesn't, those visions don't come, those images don't come, that imagination is not there. So many things are. But at the same time, it's
extreme states, yeah. The thing is, very often, I know that for Reshma, when she was having these voices and she was sure that no medication will go inside her throat, she used to come into the office, and offices drop in for a lot of people, so she used to drop in with her sketchbook. And she would have, it often helps people who hear voices to have music in their ears, because there can be only one stream of information going through the brain. So she used to listen to a lot of loud music. So she would have all this and she'll not talk to anybody, and I would quickly vacate my room so that she's not disturbed. So she'll find one corner and then sit for hours just drawing. Sit for hours, and that's how she managed those periods, and she created the most beautiful art I've seen. It's really actually, and she was really negotiating with the voices at that point. That's what she has a film called A Drop of Sunshine. You might want to see it online too. So,
Ma'am, one thing that I thought was, I have noticed was that so the aim of the psychiatric treatment is not to help the person to decrease the distress, but to help the people around him
Absolutely.
to not get
Absolutely.
affected by it. So why do you think that there is such kinds of seeing them as dangerous people? Why do you think that is there? Because most of the time I've heard one person saying that that person was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and the doctor said she used to beat the person, sometimes beat others. So the doctor, when next time we went to the doctor, we said she still hears voices and she talks to herself and all. But the doctor said it is okay until and unless she's not beating another person. So that means the aim of the treatment is to help the people around her, but not her. So if the treatment aim is that, it is not at all going to help in any way.
yeah, so beating the person comes up in a number of occasions, and what I have processed this is the whole question of violence is like all over society. It's not just in households where there is someone with schizophrenia or something. So violence is all around us. And also violence is interactional. No one person can be violent all by themselves. And very often where there is a person who is having extreme states, you will find a hostile environment where that person cannot cope. And somebody will be saying, you sit down here, you go there, you wear this dress, you don't move there, why are you opening the window, shut the curtain, like this, constantly. It's like, I've seen this in almost many families which come to us in Bapu Trust. Many families where there's somebody who's hearing voices, they cannot stand up to authority figures and say, yeah, go to hell, let me mind my own life. So, and then it all comes up, and also sexual trauma, sexual violence in childhood, these all come up as voices later on. And so violence is interactional, and whenever there's someone who says that, I'm hearing voices, we usually work more with the families than with the person, because they've really got into some habitual patterns of controlling. We call it control command environment. So there you'll usually find this kind of response by a person that they are hearing voices. So where the environment is habitually long-term controlling, then you'll find. So violence is interactional. Yeah, of course you're right. This is like how to make them. You've tried all other means of controlling a person, that has not worked. And if the person continues to resist, then you make them zombie. So that is very much part of. Now, there's a voice here I'm hearing in my head that there are people who benefit from medication, but provided that they have choice in the matter. So even antipsychotic medication, people do. There are people who say, I don't want to be creative, I just want these voices to go. So maybe they are helped by the voices. Yeah, so that is to be fair. There are good psychiatrists. There are psychiatrists who actually listen to you. And so it's good to also look at that side. To find someone who can actually support you in your personal journey.
Go on. I was wondering, maybe it's an obvious question. Like the way I look at, I think therapy and medication are on a continuum. Are they really on a continuum? Are there different approaches? Are there various approaches to therapy? I also want to understand how does therapy work. And I've seen therapy and medication both be used at the same time or used at different points. What is the relation between therapy and medication?
You must take I'm sorry, I know that you're having like really personal questions over here, and I am sorry because given my point of view and having traveled this journey since the age of 5, I always go on a track, a critical track, despite being an arts-based therapist. So what I want to say is that for me, psychology is a founding discipline, not psychiatry. Psychiatry is a behavioral discipline. Psychology is the founding discipline because it gives you actually some content of people's processing, cognitive processing, emotional processing. It qualifies people's thoughts and feelings in a way that psychiatry never does. So for me, these are two distinct areas of intervention. Unfortunately, again, because of the policy frames that we have and those that we have inherited, psychologists today, in legal terms, are on a par with the Babas and Buas. They don't have legitimacy. And so they tend to, if at all they have to survive, they tend to be associated with some psychiatric clinic or the other. That is how mostly it is working. Otherwise, mostly the psychologists are also moving out of academia and moving on to industry or education or those areas. They are not really getting into clinical work with people. So, so that is something that, and for me, if you find good therapists, that will work very, very well. And I think that therapy is a standalone. It doesn't need to be supplemented by something else. But this is my view. This is not the mainstream view.
Are there various approaches to therapy? Is
Yeah.
there a Western approach versus like the approach?
Yeah, there are many approaches, and it's like food. What do you like to eat? There are infinite choices. Like that, these days you have yoga, meditations, you have all kinds of things that are available. So I think it's good to just see what is suiting a person. For some people, just long distance walking may help. When I was depressed, what helped me was really putting in 3 hours at a gym here in Hyderabad, actually.
Yeah.
And this was an old military gym with really old equipment and an old man on top of that who was
And
trained in the army.
And a lot of old sweat everywhere.
Yes. So that's what helped me, because I'm inclined to exercise. I don't think these are therapists who go deep. The psychoanalysts who go deep for years. For me, it's like no. This is not. People have stories and stories. I have stories and stories to tell. Yes, but I'm not somebody who is depending on those stories to find my safety space inside. For me, long distance walking helps, gymming helps, gardening helps. I'm very much body oriented. Meditation helps, visualization helps. Something that I'm drumming helps. So I'm somebody who works a lot on body healing. I believe that the body has a capacity to heal, and then if I find the right tools, then I should be able to use them. So that's my view. But there are lots of available. So it's each to their own. Somebody are going to church and waiting for Jesus to arrive and going into trance helps them. So be it. We've seen churches like that. Lakhs of people come. Then Jesus arrives and everybody goes into trance, and then they feel refreshed after that. In the bastis, we see women like this. For me, it's a body phenomenon. Just like I do long distance walking, somebody is shaking and shivering to let go of their traumas. This works for me. But there are different. Some people who are more into religious. I'm not into religion, but if somebody is into religious practices, the Quran might help. There are Quranic healers, who can sit with you, and sometimes we use the imam when the belief system is very strongly Islamic. We're not able to help them in the bastis. So sometimes the imam helps them. So like this, each to their own, and each culture, each community has its own ways of dealing with this. So each have their own belief systems. Ayurveda, we've had excellent results with homeopathy, especially for depression and all these other issues. It's like homeopathy works amazingly well. Ayurveda works amazingly well. So we have now connection with Unani, naturopathy, homeopathy, Ayurveda in our working setup. So
Excuse me. The MSP or any community wellness program is Ayush specialties are never into.
never, they don't come in. Yeah, they just they don't do anything at all except dispense drugs. So this is a big complaint for us.
Even in training also, I think like you talked about a lot of alternative therapies,
Yeah.
but if it is in clinical psychology training or psychiatric social work training or psychiatric training, the syllabus also like it's very limited to
Mental
CBT
disorder.
behavioral therapies and experiential mode rather that too in theoretically. But mostly yoga and meditation is taught theoretically, but how to approach it or how to
how to
make
apply
a
it in
patient.
practice. Yes.
So it's almost in the medical line, like psychiatry, social work, and psychology. So have you been like pursuing anything on that line, like to make that like training or the training of psychologists and psychiatrists?
Yeah, so next year we're going to start a full-blown training. We've been doing lots of training on what we call training for non-formal caregivers, particularly family members, people in peer communities, people who are generally like, Tejaswini, you said, I have a family member. For people like you, people who are like in organizations like Anveshi, there's somebody who comes in every day, she just sits there in one corner, doesn't do anything, doesn't talk, she just sits there in that corner. What the hell am I supposed to do with her? Sometimes if we go close to her, she's like crying, so I don't know how to talk. So like this, and many of us have experienced this kind of thing, somebody who's here, something is wrong, I know that, but I can't put my finger on it. So like this, work with them. So we are starting a program next year. It's an intensive program, but we offer trainings all the time. And yes, DMHP, we're also starting pilots in other states of India, just to wherever DMHP is active. See, it's very difficult to expect that the doctor will be a yoga teacher. Let us not expect this. It's not in their role to be yoga teachers. Doctors will be doctors, right? The only message we are giving to the doctors: get off our backs. Yeah, don't comment on our marriage, our partners, our lifestyle, whether we can have kids or not. Don't comment on this. This is not your role. Doctor, be a doctor. That's it. No? And allow other people to play different roles with respect to well-being. Well-being is everybody's business. It's not just the business of doctors. Yeah, so that's the only kind of thing. So DMHP is run by doctors. You can't expect them to be yoga teachers. Somebody else will have to do it. The thing is whether the system will allow you the space to do it. That is the thing. Under the present law, all psychiatric nurses, all psychologists, psychoanalysts, everybody is delegitimized. We are all traditional healers only. Yeah, we are all like that, all delegitimized.
I was just, can I just say something? I was struck by something you said earlier about how very often the issues also we've not learned how to deal with these extreme states. Like a family doesn't know what to do when a person is in an extreme state. They could be extremely creative in that state, but it's also extremely inexplicable to everyone else. Yeah. And I'm just thinking that because the sort of medical model has been so dominant and has been so much emphasized, one has not really explored ways of actually engaging with that, with extreme anger or extreme depression or anything of that sort. Or even like what you do about voices. You may want the voices, they may be useful, but you may want to control them in some ways. Learning that earphones could help listening to music, or learning that you can talk back to the voices. And so there are therapies and there are lots of therapies, but with the whole sort of emphasis on the medical model, it seems as if that although no one is saying that don't do all of that, the message seems to be that it's not really required. This can sort of silence all of that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is cause for worry. Yeah, really. But the winds of change are happening. That's what INTAR. You were there at INTAR. So INTAR is the International Network of Alternatives, and we had organized. They are a group which has been around for 10 years, and we organized one of their international conferences in Pune this year. Last year actually, November 2016, and it was amazing, because you could see that there is really live and active interest among large constituencies of people coming from very different backgrounds for change. People by now know, 20 years, the first psychiatric drug came out in the year 1960. It's compared to, blood pressure drugs or other traditional drugs, it's very new. And we don't, the way, and already the psychopharmaceutical company has taken over that business of what should go out in research. So like the tobacco, people are paying now compensation. All the Eli Lilly and some of these Johnson & Johnson, some of these big companies, they have tried and tested on all populations in the West. And now they find out that this is not working. Something is wrong with these drugs. SSRIs, there was huge risk of suicide among young people. So now they have banned SSRIs for young people. For children, though, is out of question. But they've banned SSRIs for young people. So every year you get these black labels on the drug saying that don't use it here, don't use it there, don't use it like this, don't use it like that. So it's all coming up. So people know by now that whatever they were trying and pushing in the market is not working. So, and I think GMH is also now soft pedaling on the medication issue because of that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really, earlier if you see Vikram's works, he would say medication should be available in every PHC for depression. Now he wouldn't say that. He would say provide peer support, that is safer.
Yeah.
So that change is happening. So Intar was again for us a big shock because we never expected it to be such a big event. It was like a, it was like a gate-crushing success. We were not expecting that. We were like all kinds of people. WHO came. Why would WHO come to one small project in Pune? Those are big bosses of WHO. Like it gave us a administrative nightmare with all these big people. But the winds of change. That's what I mean. So for sure now, government of Maharashtra, Municipal Corporation Pune, has asked us to start 5 wellness centers. They are releasing a budget also for it. They are giving us 10 lakhs per year to start these. Government of Maharashtra, State Department has said that we need help to Bapu Trust. We've gone to them for like 20 years. They would always shut the door on us. Now they're calling us and they're chasing us. In fact, we said we don't have the money, we don't know what to do. They said no, you come. And so last time we went and they give us like really, they invite us with flowers in
Wow.
like a bouquet. So they want us to deinstitutionalize the women who are in the women's ward and give training for their staff. So winds of change are here, and I guess UNCRPD is part of the story. It's the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It's part of the story.